Hello, hello to all my fabulous change makers. And we are here today with another amazing interview of somebody who is here to play her part in changing the world. Welcome, Jamie Copeland. I'm so happy to have you with us. Tell people who you are and a little about what makes you so amazing.
Well, thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I am Jamie Copeland. Yep. I am the founder and CEO of Strategic U. And we're a company that helps families with kiddos with ADHD. And our mission, and I do call it a mission because it's more than just your everyday therapy, it's more than just your everyday um, community, touching base on ADHD. We are here to really change what ADHD looks like in this world today.
Mm.
And we are really on a mission just to help these kids understand they have so many strengths within them and they get to utilize those strengths.
Love that. Well, and I know when we were talking the other day, you were talking from a history kind of space in terms of, who we wouldn't have half the inventions we have today if it wasn't for people who had ADHD. Isn't that right?
Very true. I really just had this feeling like, first of all, I'm touched with ADHD because my son has it. So I'm going to just back up and say a little bit about that part because this is why this has been my passion.
Yes.
I do have a background in psychology, so I'm fortunate in that. I've been able to really study up a lot more on ADHD itself. But going back to your question, um, I had this thought of I see the brilliance in my son. And I feel sometimes like I'm the only person in the world who really sees him, and I'm sure that parents out there can absolutely relate to this that have kiddos with ADHD.
Hmm.
And I was just like, what is it about schools today or the world today that feels like ADHD is such a problem? And how did they feel back in history when it came to this? So I looked it up. I did a deep dive into it, and I found that before industrialization came in America and in the world as well, ADHD traits, of course, it wasn't called ADHD then, right? So the traits of ADHD is all we have to go off on.
Hmm.
Were actually seen as those people were looked at as gifted or touched by God. And you can look back at many of our great inventors in the past and know that they actually had ADHD. Think Einstein, think Tesla, think, I cannot think of the man's name still that made the radio, but they actually sent him to an insane asylum
Oh my
because of it.
goodness. Yeah,
Yeah.
Thomas Edison is in that crew, and, yeah, and I've even heard Henry Ford. I mean, we're talking
Yes.
about captains of industry, for gosh sakes.
Philosophers, even like so many people back in the day, they were actually celebrated for having these traits. And today it's like they're being squashed, which, I don't knock, of course, any of our teachers or anybody that works with ADHD by any means because they can only go off of what they're learning. But that is what we're on a mission to change is to help people really understand, no, these children are brilliant. They just learn a different way because they have a different wiring of the brain, but they're here for a purpose because they are our next engineers. They are our next entrepreneurs and our next generation of those that are just bringing about massive change in this world. I like to call them world changers.
Yes, yes, I call them change makers. So yes,
Yeah.
we're on the same page for sure. So tell us a little bit more about the difference in learning styles of people who have been told they have ADHD.
Yeah, sure. So, in a neurotypical brain, so neurotypical is a person that doesn't have ADHD, for those that may not know. And then there's the neurodivergent brain. But in a neurotypical brain, it's easy for them to sit in a classroom and sit down and do their worksheets or sit there quietly and just be able to listen to a lecture. But in a neurodivergent brain, they're more of the type, and funny enough, we talked about this recently too, but they're more of the type that's like, I don't want to sit here and have death by worksheet. I want to actually do the things. I want to be able to do the things with them because they're kinesthetic learners, they're
Yes.
visual learners. They're not the type that can sit down, sit still because their brain is constantly active. They're
Mhm.
constantly wanting to be able to get out there and figure it out. One of the things about my son since he was really little that was really bothersome to some was he would love to take things apart to figure out how they worked and then put them back together. And
Oh,
he
that's
didn't always figure it out, you know what I mean? But that was just the way that his brain worked.
yep.
And that's a part of his genius.
That's
So being able to bring about more of an understanding in the way that their brains work and really changing the trajectory of how they are taught, even in schools or in homeschooling or in any way, so that people really start to understand how to get through to these kids to help them to succeed.
wow. Yeah, and that is so important. I was just thinking of a gentleman who lives here in North Carolina, and his name is escaping me right now, but he is absolutely one of those that you're speaking of because he's a motivational speaker now, and he always used to say, "Yeah, when I was in school, I was always told I was supposed to sit down and shut up, and now I stand on stages and speak for a living. How crazy was that?"
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, we have 4 strengths that we really focus on within Strategic U. We've got hyperactivity, creativity, resilience, and why am I forgetting that last one? Adaptability. There we go. And each person really kind of hones to one of those strengths over the other. Of course, they have all of them, right? But we
Mhm,
all are individuals. So you think of the creative type, there are problem solvers. You think
mhm,
of the adaptability type, they're the ones that can get up and figure things out, but then move on quickly. You think of the resilience, and those are the ones that are like, okay, um, I think I got those backwards. But anyways, regardless, resilience, they're able to just adapt or be where they're supposed to be in the moment. So how do I explain that better? I'm sorry. Um, Basically, I can really relate it best with military children because that's my background, right? They're
mhm,
extremely resilient. They're able to really just go and be who they're supposed to be or want to be in a world no matter where they're at, right?
mhm,
So, but that's a huge trait within ADHD, right? And then you've got your hyperfocus, and those are the ones that can really get down deep and figure things out in a manner that most people can't, right?
mhm.
And all of them think outside the box.
Which is a good thing. We need more of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Well, and I have heard, and I don't know if this is part of your experience or not, but I have heard that typically when somebody has been told they're ADHD, that when they find something they're really passionate about is when they can become really hyper focused. Is that part of your experience?
100%. So, one of my favorite people that I've worked with actually within this business, her name's Victoria Waller, and she's actually a tutor for kids with special needs.
Mhm,
And she brought this to my attention, but I've just loved really being able to understand a little bit more because she's been doing this for, oh goodness, 40 years,
mm.
so she has a lot more experience in this area than I do. um, but yes, so she will take a child and she will figure out their passions, and you can teach them anything through their passions, anything and everything, right? So, an example would be a child that she had she had one that was really interested in race cars. So she she would go through math and teach them that way, like how fast it would go. And I'm not a tutor, so don't quote me on different things here. But uh, you know, she was able to teach them through math. She was able to teach them through science that way. She was able to even find somebody that was a race car driver to come and write them letters and do different things with them. It's incredible what you can do when you figure out their passions, because when you figure those out, they can learn anything through that passion. It's incredible.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I have a letter from a high school here in North Carolina. I volunteered for a whole semester at this high school, and I brought a business plan writing competition into a classroom, and that group, it was interesting. I got a call from the principal a year later, and she wanted to know what I did with that group. And I said, "Well, I'll tell you if you tell me why you're asking." And she said, "Well, it's because that class got higher end of grade test scores than any before or after." And I said, "Well, isn't that amazing when you make the learning relevant to them?" They all wanted to be business owners, and they had to do reading, they had to do writing, they had to do arithmetic as part of all of that. And, we
Yeah.
have documentation that it actually improved their scores. So, it just blows my mind that the school systems don't embrace some of these things more.
I
you know,
mean,
it's it's
you're
crazy.
not you're not kidding. I mean, it blows my mind too that this hasn't been figured out. I mean, really what it comes down to is
Yes.
exploratory learning. I
Yes.
mean, um, I know one of the places that my son really thrived in was Montessori when he was little, because there was so
Yes.
much exploratory within his learning,
Mhm.
and that wouldn't have been a great path for him continuing on, but when his in his younger ages, it really was, you
Mm.
know, and that is what we need to really kind of see more of in the school districts. And it's not that we're going to see change tomorrow, but this is something at Strategic U we're really working on. But where we're starting right now is we have this network that we are inviting parents into, to where we can start helping them become the pioneers in their home and in their school districts. And we have experts across the board within this network
Mhm.
that are here to help. And the reason I created this is because, hey, I'm that mama that felt extremely alone and was doing all the research by myself, trying to figure out all of these things for him to help him and make sure that he is succeeding. And did I fail along the way? 100% in many areas. I did. Did I fail him by, not understanding him at times? Yes. Yes, I am human. Hi. you know, I did.